Heyo, welcome to Team SNG deck profile. Today we are going to update the Fur Hire deck profile that was featured on the channel a long time ago. While I got your attention, I'd like to ask you guys, leave us a like, leave us a comment, leave us a subscribe. So this deck hasn't changed massively. It got a new card in Ignition Assault, which sort of slipped under the radar for me. But while I was looking through the previous sets, I noticed it and I thought, I should probably update this. As I say, the deck hasn't changed massively from the previous build, and the strategy behind it is still very similar. The goal is effectively to have lots of monsters with different types on the field, and use there can only be one to lock your opponent out. So it's a bit of a floodgatey deck. It used to be really fragile due to the fact that a single negate could kill the deck. However, the new card from Ignition Assault does circumnavigate that problem, but you do need to see it. That all being said, let's get into it. The little fur hires all have the ability to special summon another fur hire from the hand, and they also have an ability that will go off whenever a fur hire is special summoned. The bigger fur hires protect their comrades on the field from different things, whether it be card effects or battle, or they have effects that are based on the number of fur hire monsters on the field, and a couple of them even have effects that act as negates, depending on what's on the field as well. So, the first fur hire we're going to talk about is Heyo, Messenger Fur Hire. This monster acts as a monster reborn, so again, all little fur hires, she can special summon a fur hire from your hand. When a fur hire is special summoned while she's on the field, she lets you special summon a fur hire from the grave. So you want to be a bit tactical about when you use her, but you could theoretically use her towards the end of a combo to bring something back from the grave that you could then utilize later. Next, we go on to the twins in 3 copies of Dampa and 2 copies of Recon. Dampa, when a fur hire monster is special summoned, will let you target a card on the field that is face up and pop it. Recon lets you target a set card. So these can be your back row removal, but Dampa can also remove monsters as well, so it can be just a bit of spot removal the deck has access to. Following them is one of the most important fur hires in our beat. Bladesman Fur Hire. This is the rota of the deck. When a fur hire monster is special summoned, you get to search the deck and add a fur hire monster to the hand. So, beat is really useful in the sense that it can get you any fur hire you need that you haven't already been able to see. Following beat, we have 2 copies of Helmer, 2 copies of Bravo, and 2 copies of Seal. When a fur hire is special summoned, while any of these are on the field, Helmer will let you discard a card to draw a card. Bravo will give all of your fur hire monsters a 500 attack and defense boost until the end of the turn, and Seal will let you add a fur hire monster from your graveyard back to your hand. And that does it for our smaller fur hires. On to our larger fur hires. We run the 2 protection fur hires, one in Sagita and one in Dinah. Sagita protects your fur hires from card effects, and Dinah protects them from battle. Basically, Sagita becomes the only thing that can be targeted by card effects, and Dinah is the only thing that can be targeted for battle. So it's kind of a good thing to be able to put them on the board towards the end of your turn and put your opponent on their back foot. Your opponent now has to deal with them before they can deal with anything else. On top of that, they each have an effect based on the number of fur hires on the field. Sagita will burn your opponent for 500 points for each fur hire on the field, except for itself. And Dinah will let you banish cards from your opponent's graveyard equal to the number of fur hire monsters you have on the field, except for itself. Next, we go on to our negating fur hires. We have the Spell and Trap Negate in Wiz Sage Fur Hire, and we have the Monster Negate in Raphael Champion Fur Hire. Raphael has a Pot of Duality, Pot of Prosperity effect as well. He lets you excavate cards equal to the number of other fur hires on the field, and then you get to add any of those cards, and it doesn't have to be a fur hire, to your hand. And this is really clutch, because you can use this by spamming the field full of fur hires, summoning your Raphael, and then digging sort of 4 or 5 cards deep to potentially find there can only be one, which is definitely a key integral part of this deck strategy. Wiz, much like Sagita, has a life point invoking effect in that she will let you gain 500 life points for each for hire monster on the field. So this can be really useful in time, but on top of that, her main thing is that she can be used to negate spells and traps. Both Raphael and Wiz will require you to discard a for hire card, though, to use their negates. So you need to be aware that you're going to need a for hire in hand to make the most of these two. Finally, outside of the for hires, I run a couple other monsters, and these are really quite interesting. I run one copy of Archnemeses Protos and one copy of Archnemeses Escados. What they let you do is they let you banish 3 monsters with different attributes or 3 monsters with different types to name an attribute or a type and let you destroy all the monsters on the field with that attribute or type, and then neither player can special summon that attribute or type while these 2 remain on the field. This is an okay idea, but going first, they're not really that great. You really want them going second. And with the draw power the deck runs in our big boss monster in the extra deck, seeing these with only 1 copy each is usually not a problem, coupled with Raphael letting you dig for them, and a couple other cards that we run letting you dig for them as well. You should be able to see them if you need them, but you really only want them turn 3 and beyond if you've gone first. If you're going second, you're quite happy to see them in turn 1 because you can declare a type that your opponent has or an attribute that your opponent has and get rid of all of them. Onto our spell traps. So we're running a slew of different for hire spells. The first of the for hire spells is Fandora. Fandora, I only run it at 1. Basically, instead of drawing, you can search for a for hire, and if you've got 5 or more for hires on the field, you can destroy this card and then destroy all cards on the field, but then your opponent can't take any kind of damage until the next turn. So it's kind of overly fair. Getting 5 for hires on the field is not hard. However, you know, you're at the limitations because you're going to have to destroy this card anyway, so you can't do it multiple turns running, and so on and so forth. So, at the end of the day, I think Fandora is a little too fair, but I understand that it's just a nice board wipe to have access to, and being able to search out any for hire monster that you might be missing can be very beneficial as well. After that, we run 3 copies of Mayhem for Hire. Mayhem for Hire is Monster Reborn. It being a quick play spell, though, is really useful because you can use it on your opponent's turn to trigger off all of your little for hires that might be on the field at the time. So if you've got sort of 2 or 3 little for hires on the field and you set this, you can activate this, special summon a for hire from the graveyard, and then if you've got Dampa and Recon, for instance, you can pop 2 cards, 1 face down, 1 face up. So it can be really useful to act as like spot removal on your opponent's turn or whatever it is you might have on the field to pop off your little for hires that you may have left on the field at the end of the turn. Outside of that, we run the newest card in Rookie for Hire. Rookie for Hire came out in Ignition Assault, as I say. This one just slipped under the radar for me. I do apologize. Rookie for Hire actually came out in Phantom Rage, and it slipped under the radar for me. But what it does is, the reason I say it's the card that's boosted the consistency of this deck, is it used to be if your for hire monster on the field was negated to let you special summon, your turn was done. However, Rookie for Hire will let you tribute a monster and special summon a monster for hire from your hand or deck whose level is 1 higher or 1 lower than the monster tributed. So if you normal summon something and you go to activate its effect to special summon, you could actually special summon something else if it was to get negated. So it lets you get around that 1 negate being an issue. Now your opponent is going to need 2 negates to be able to actually stop your for hires from going off, so long as you can see your Rookie for Hire. Next, we're running 1 copy of Rhoda, because Beat is a warrior, so being able to get to him is really important, so we want an extra copy. And we're also running 1 copy of the Warrior Returning Alive. Now, we are technically running a version of this in the deck with Seal, but having a copy that will bring back our Beat, that means that we can use our Seal to bring something else back, is always nice. So I run 1 copy of the Warrior Returning Alive. You could change this out for something else if you wanted, but I quite like this. Onto our traps, we run 2 copies of Training for Hire for all your training needs. which is a really useful card. If a for hire monster was to be destroyed by card effect or battle, you can special summon from your deck a for hire monster of a lower level. So you can use that to trigger off your little for hires on your opponent's turn again. But you can also use it to potentially put a protection out. So if your opponent was to get rid of something like your Raphael, who's level 8, you could put out your Sagita or your Dinah, depending on whatever it is that your opponent has. If your opponent is playing a lot of spot removal, then you might want to put out your Sagita to protect your cards from card effects. If your opponent's playing a lot of attack type monsters, like maybe they're playing something like Warrocks, then you could special summon your Dinah to protect your other monsters from battle. It can be a really useful card because it lets you tailor what you do on your opponent's turn to the situation. And finally, in the main deck, we're running 3 copies, as stated before, of There Can Only Be One. Most of your for hires are different types, so you are likely to be in a situation where this isn't going to affect you, but it is heavily going to affect your opponent. We run 3 copies because obviously if one gets destroyed, we would like to have a second. If the second gets destroyed, well, it's nice to have 3. I'm not running any draw power in the deck because of Raphael and something else we run in our extra deck, letting us excavate for what we need, and our big boss monster letting us have lots of draw power. So seeing There Can Only Be One isn't really too difficult. We should be able to do it pretty consistently. Onto our extra deck. So first things first, the big boss monster of the deck that's been alluded to a couple times. Folgo, Justice for Hire. Folgo is really good. When it is link summoned, you can special summon from your deck a monster for hire with a different type from the 3 monsters used as material for it. So this does require 3 monsters with different types to make, but as I stated, you're going to likely have that with your for hire monsters anyway. You can then link all 3 away, and then you can special summon a for hire monster from your deck. What I like about this is what you can do is you can use this to special summon a baby for hire after you've special summoned something like a Raphael. Normally, special summoning a Raphael or a Sagita or one of your higher level for hires ends your streak because now you're in a situation where you can't special summon using the for hire on field anymore because only the baby for hires have the ability to special summon from the hand. But Folgo can circumnavigate that because you can link off your big for hire and get Folgo, who can then special summon out another baby for hire. On top of that, if you've got 3 for hire monsters on the field and a card is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can draw 3 cards. If you don't have 3, you still get to draw 1 card, so you're still getting some hand advantage there, but it really does benefit if you've got at least 3 for hires on the field when something is destroyed, because Folgo will let you just draw 3 cards to your hand, which is really nice. The one limitation to Folgo is that he cannot be used as link material, so you need to be careful of that. Outside of Folgo, we're running a slew of link monsters. They're all utility and sort of useful for different reasons. The first one I'm going to talk about, actually, is one of our link 4s, and that is our Saryuja. Saryuja can be extremely valuable. If you can make it with 4 materials before you make your Folgo, you can excavate 4 cards, add 1 to the hand. You can also special summon from your hand, and so you can sort of get yourself in this nice little system of where you're going to keep gaining advantage and putting cards on the field, and then you go into your Folgo, who's going to let you keep drawing cards, and so on and so forth. So Saryuja can always be a really nice card, and a definite game changer in this deck. Now we're going to do the typical 1, 2, 3, and 4s. Link 1, we've got Link Karibo, with Philo being a level 1, that gives us access to our Link Karibo. Link 2, we got an IP Masquerena, because link summoning on our opponent's turn is always nice. We also have 2 copies of Nightmare Phoenix. Spot removal, especially for back row, can sometimes be hard to come by. I know this deck does have 2 in Recon and Dampa, but still, it's nice to have constant access to 1. We also have our Nightmare Cerberus. We have our Nightmare Unicorn. We have our Nightmare Griffin. I've suddenly fallen in love with Nightmare Griffin. If you haven't checked out our Pure Tri-Brigade build, I have combos that get us to Nightmare Griffin in a way that it's not pointing to the extra monster zone, and our opponent has no arrows pointing to their zone on turn 1, meaning that special summon monsters are going to be a problem for him. Next, we run my favorite, Avermax. We also run Appaloosa. we run Borreload, and we run Boral Sword. You can change this up any way you like. As I say, this deck has no issue putting bodies on board, and putting bodies on board means linking up is not a problem. So you can easily get into like an IP Masquerena and a Link Karibo, for instance, with a Folgo on the board, and then you can link off your IP Masquerena and your Link Karibo if you wanted to go into Nightmare Mermaid, Nightmare Unicorn at any point during your opponent's turn, and so on and so forth. So being able to link in this deck is really easy, and you basically can just play whatever cards it is you need to put your opponent on their back foot or to play to the situation your opponent's forcing you into. So what do I think about this deck? Well, I think the deck's definitely got a bit more consistency now that we've got the Rookie for Hire in our deck as well, letting us play through a single negate, which the deck really couldn't do before. Getting recursion with our Philo and searchability with our Beat is really nice. Also, being able to dig into our deck to look for our deck's win con, and there can only be one, with not just Raphael, but also with Folgo's draw power, and even Saryuja is really good too. Being able to get to there can only be one is the difference between winning and losing with this deck, and so having 3 cards that can let us dig through our deck to find it is clutch. Speaking of, there can only be one, as I stated, is the win con of the deck. You really want to get to this quickly and efficiently. You do need to be a bit careful though, because you need to then be aware of what types you have on the field, because if you have a Beast Warrior, for instance, or a Beast, you can't then put another Beast or Beast Warrior on the field. So you do need to just be a little careful. However, there can only be one definitely hurts your opponent more than it hurts you. Seeing as we've got all the different types and all the different attributes and all that, we're in good shape. Rookie for Hire, as I've stated, can give you that ability to play through a negate. With the different types and attributes, though, we can also benefit from big board wipes in our 2 Archnemeses boss monsters that we run. Whether Escados is blowing up and locking our opponent out of the type they would like, or Protos is blowing up and locking our opponent out of certain attributes, we're in good shape with these 2 being in our deck. And again, much like there can only be one, being able to see them isn't super impossible due to the fact that we have the draw power of Folgo and the excavation power of Saryuja and Raphael to help us get there. And check out one of these 2 videos you see now. That being said, Ollie, thank you for watching. Leave us a comment, leave us a subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the next video.